Hello and welcome to Travel Radio Podcast. This is a video edition, and I am privileged today to have Dr. Jeffrey Barnes on the program with me. You may recall Dr. Jeffrey Barnes is also known as Dr. Disneyland. That is because he teaches the only accredited course in Disney in the United States. He is an expert on the history and motivation and resilience of Walt Disney. So I'm going to stop introducing him because he'll do a better job himself. So welcome to the program, Jeff.
Hello, Megan. How are you?
Good, just locked down.
Yeah. I've been doing a lot of these interviews of late, and I typically have been starting them with these words. Wow, this is one fine mess.
That's pretty accurate. It's pretty accurate.
Yeah.
Oh, so happy VE Day.
Yeah. A big celebration, and I know that you're in Europe, you're in England, and
it's a big deal here.
A proud day as an American, and a thrill to be celebrating it in England for sure. And I think as Disney fans, something certainly to celebrate because Walt had a big hand to. A big hand in all of that. I don't know that a lot of people realize this, but the day that the Japanese bombed Pearl Harbor, the Army took over the studio in Burbank that afternoon. And Walt made a commitment to sacrifice the studio and immediately go into the development of cartoons, animation, shorts, and produce what were essentially propaganda films, for the purpose of training and, war bond, pictures, pretty much at cost. And, for the next 4 years, they basically made no money at all.
Yeah.
But he was willing to make that sacrifice for the sake of the country and for the sake of the war effort. And, as a result, we can celebrate VE Day many years later because of individuals like Walt Disney and the sacrifices that he and so many others were willing to make during that effort.
Yeah, it's interesting. They really make the military appreciation here and remembrance. They look pretty far back, but also, because it is an island and because of the proximity to Germany, everywhere you turn, there is a war memorial. And, the families are still in the area, so they can trace it back really far. It's a wild thing. I mean, in a couple minutes, my husband's going outside to have separate but together VE Day drinks with my neighbors. So, so it'll be really nice, but that's just not something that we have done in the States before. So I'm pretty excited to do that and participate with it.
And it was sort of a shared experience during World War II, and it kind of harkens back to what I think we're all experiencing right now with COVID-19. We're all going through this together, very differently, but together nonetheless. And the Queen gave a very moving speech a few weeks ago, and she referenced what England went through during World War II, and she harkened back to that experience and harkened back to some of those memories. And I think she did a great job. We went through that and we got through that together, and we'll get through this as well.
Yeah, it's really interesting. I mean, not to divert too much, but I mean, I do not live in like an area where people have gardening skills. We'll put it like that. Like this, people buy the groceries in this neighborhood, but like we have all pulled up our backyards. We are growing vegetables. It's cool, and we're sharing plants. And we just had our first tomato plant sprout like 5 minutes ago. So yeah, there's some real community building that's happening in this very sad time. But anyway, let's talk to something we can all relate to. Well, a lot of people can relate to, and that is interrupted plans. things happening to us that are out of our control, and knowing that things will change and get better, but we've got to overcome adversity. And in the travel industry, and for all the travelers out there, that's exactly the position we're in right now. And there's no better example of, overcoming adversity and surviving and then thriving than Walt Disney. So you're kind of the expert on this. So I wanted to have you on to be, a motivator to people. And also, before I
Yeah.
forget, so it's on the bottom of the screen, but will you tell people kind of your passion project right now and where they can find it?
Yeah, so we've been doing a lot of updating and writing on the blog,
Mm-hmm.
and you can find the blog at thewisdomofwalt.com, because I know people need inspiration, people need motivation, they need that spark of encouragement, and the
Mm-hmm.
blog is 100% free. And
Yeah.
so if you feel discouraged, if you're tired of social media, if you're tired of negativity in the news, and you need the hope, you need the encouragement that Disney provides, I want to be able to give you that. And so again, you can find it at thewisdomofwalt.com, and the blog is 100% free. All you need to do is subscribe to it by way of the email address. And some of the new content you can find, the first most recent post was entitled "The Next Right Thing," a very popular post. A line that came out of Frozen 2. I know a lot of us feel quote unquote frozen right now.
Yeah.
The world is 100% shut down. And if you don't know what the future holds, if you don't know what to do next, maybe the best thing you can do is quote unquote the next right thing. And so, in the midst of a global pandemic, you don't have to figure out next week, next month, next year. Maybe the best thing you can do is the next right thing. And sometimes that is something as simple as getting up and taking a shower,
Yeah.
taking a walk, doing the dishes.
Yeah.
It's not much, but again, it's just the next right thing. And I think the line in all of that, Megan, that really resonated with people is we are living in a world where we've lost all of our structure, we've lost all of our routine. We're living in a world where every single day looks like Saturday, but feels like Monday,
Yeah. And I might
right?
suggest that the next right thing be to just put on your Monday clothes.
Yeah,
That it
and
really
and
helps.
just just keep moving forward. Just
Yeah.
do whatever feels like quote unquote the next right thing. And then the next post that came after that was entitled "The Light at the End of the Tunnels," and it was really about Walt and him losing his first successful cartoon character, which has kind of been forgotten. A little fellow by the name of Oswald the Lucky Rabbit, but it was out of that loss, out of that desperation, that he came up with Mickey Mouse. I think we've all heard of Mickey Mouse,
Yeah.
the world's most popular and profitable cartoon character. And, Mickey debuted in November of 1928. And, November of 1928 is almost on the very eve of the Great Depression.
Yeah.
And, it was Mickey Mouse and his indomitable spirit that got us as a country, got us as a world through the next dozen years of that awful economic depravity. And, just like we needed Mickey Mouse during the 1930s, during the Great Depression, we need Mickey Mouse now. Mickey doesn't give us a high five; he gives us a high four because he only has four fingers. And there's a great story behind, the reason why for that.
Well, wait, don't tell
Um,
us Wyatt. Let's talk about the
well,
exciting thing.
the reason why is it's simple economy of scale.
Yeah.
By when they first were hand drawing Mickey Mouse, by cutting his fingers down to four versus five, it literally saved millions of dollars in hand drawn animation costs over the years. And
And it's
and
fine because they gave him a thumb, and mice don't have thumbs anyway.
exactly.
It's already not real. It's
And
fine.
yeah, but if you've ever been to one of the Disney parks, one of the Magic Kingdoms, that there is a giant floral Mickey
Yep.
greeting you at the entrance to the Magic Kingdom, and then you have to make a choice. Are you going to go left or right? Are you going to enter one of the tunnels, the entrance onto Main Street, USA, stage left or stage right?
Mm-hmm.
And I talk about the light at the end of those quote unquote tunnels. And I know we're all looking for the light at the end of this tunnel.
Mm-hmm.
And when you grab hold of Mickey Mouse's hand, when you have Mickey as your partner, that indomitable spirit that we're all holding on to these days, you don't just have the light at the end of those tunnels. You're going to find a castle at the end of the street. And I think that's what we all want to hold on to these days. And I know for our travel planners out there, nobody's booking travel. Nobody's going to Disneyland. Nobody's going to Walt Disney World. But there is hope. There is light. There is a castle at the end of the street. I mean, the good news this week is Shanghai is opening later this month. And we just got news this morning that they're sold out. Now, it's
Oh my
limited
gosh.
capacity, right? But they are opening and they are sold out. So
Wow.
that's good news. That's hope. That's the light at the end of the tunnels, the castle at the end of the street that I was writing about in the blog just last week. And
Yeah.
so, Walt Disney failed more often than he succeeded. He was unbelievably resilient. And in the midst of our own crises right now, the two individuals or groups of individuals that I am most worried and most concerned about are our Disney cast members, because they're all furloughed, and our travel planners, because they're really having a difficult time.
Yeah, there are
And
a lot of
my
there are a lot of travel planners that listen, and I hope that they'll
absolutely.
watch
and
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 be
all I can
motivated.
say is do the next right thing, stay positive, keep moving forward, be resilient. Walt failed more often than he succeeded, and you're going to get through this.
Well,
I know
let's
it's
talk.
dark. I know it's desperate, but the world's going to turn back on at some point.
Yeah.
And if you go back to 1918, we're at the very end of World War One. Before we got out of World War One, we had our own Spanish flu pandemic. I mean, the estimates for that pandemic is anywhere from 20 million
Well,
to 70 million to 100 million.
can I
And
stop you
oh, by
there
the way,
real
Megan,
quick?
absolutely.
Because
Go ahead.
I want to go through in order so we can really see how Walt Disney went from adversity to adversity to adversity to
Yeah.
thriving. But before we do that whole narrative, I want to talk about the very generous thing that you are going to do for a watcher or listener. And first, we'll start with the little thing, which is not little because they're amazing. You're going to give away a pair of signed copies of your books,
Yes.
which
Yep.
is awesome. And then additionally, you are graciously going to give an hour of your time to an organization or a couple. I mean, I don't know, get your girlfriends together, get your Girl Scout troop together, a university class. Jeff is going to host a live Q&A session with you from now until we said June 4th, 1 hour of time with Jeff where he'll do a presentation on motivation, success, overcoming adversity, innovation, any of those things. Jeff's an expert on them all, and he's donating an hour of his time to brighten up your community. So there'll be an entry form in, wherever you're watching this. YouTube, below. Facebook, below. Instagram, below. And there'll be an entry form. Just click it, and you'll just add your email address, and we'll pick the winner on. Well, I wrote it down. Now I thought I wrote it down. I looked up. I didn't write it down. It is going to be, on the 19th of May is when we'll announce it. So anyway, be sure to enter that because it's an awesome opportunity. If you haven't seen Jeff speak in person, it's really engaging. So there you go. So thank you, Jeff.
You're welcome. So yeah, free set of signed books, The Wisdom of Walt, Leadership Lessons from the Happiest Place on Earth. So that's a Disneyland centric book. And then the follow up, Beyond the Wisdom of Walt, Life Lessons from the Most Magical Place on Earth. So that's a Walt Disney World centric book. And then an hour of remote, whatever, webinar, seminar, whatever you need to call it, of my time with your team. And you can pick the topic. It can be history of Disneyland, history of Walt Disney World. It can be on, resilience, customer experience, guest experience, whatever you want it to be. We'll mold it and shape it into whatever is going to meet or fit your particular needs.
Awesome. Thank you so much. That's going to be good.
Yeah.
All right, let's get to some of these things that Walt Disney just charged through, or maybe he didn't charge through, but you know what I'm saying. He overcame these things. So let's start with the first thing he survived, and he survived. He was infected with, and he did survive the Spanish flu. And also, Jeff, let me ask you real quick. Would you slide a little bit to your left? Because the camera, yes, great, thank you, because it was cropping it a little bit. Perfect. Yeah. Okay, Spanish flu, go.
So in 1918, just as we're getting ready to wrap up World War I, the Spanish flu hit, which really didn't come out of Spain. That's a whole nother story. But this version of the flu would end up wiping out somewhere between 20 and 100 million people around the world, and somewhere between 600 and 675,000 Americans. Mm. And Walt Disney desperately wants to leave his miserable childhood and go off on this great adventure in Europe and enlist in the army. His parents do not want to see this happen. He's only 16 years of age. And the best his mother will allow is for him to join the ambulance corps. Mm. And so she helps him in doctoring the documents and gets him into the Red Cross Ambulance Corps in Chicago.
I can't imagine a mom doing that. I mean,
well, yeah. But 3 of his older brothers have already run away from home.
Oh my gosh.
And so her argument is, if he joins the ambulance corps, at least I'll know where he is. And so she helps him, and he goes off to training in Chicago at, get this, Megan, a burned out amusement park. I mean, there's a lot of irony there, right?
Yeah.
And as he starts his training in fall of 1918, the Spanish flu sweeps through the Windy City, and Walt comes down with it. And he lives in Chicago, and he's taken by ambulance, not to a local hospital, because the hospitals are so dangerous that, he's basically told, if we take you to a hospital, you're almost certainly dead.
Yeah.
So we're going to take you home instead.
Oh my gosh.
His mother nurses him and his sister back to health before she catches the flu as well. They all survive.
Oh, phew.
Walt goes back to his unit and discovers they've already shipped out. He's assigned to another unit, is sent to Connecticut, and by the time all of this has happened, World War I is over. And we know the end of World War I today as Veterans Day, November 11th, right?
Yeah.
And Walt's just devastated. The entire country is celebrating the end of the Great War, or what we know as World War I today. And Walt is like, dadgummit, I missed my chance. I missed my great adventure. Mm-hmm. But a week later, they rouse everyone up in his unit at around 3 a.m. and they're like, 50 guys going to France.
Okay.
And Walt's like, well, certainly it's not going to be me. And it turns out the 50th guy called is Walter Elias Disney. And so by the end of that day, he's on a transport ship headed to France. And I write about this in the Next Right Thing blog. There's this great picture of Walt in France, and he's got this cartoon drawn on the side of the ambulance that he drove.
Yeah.
following the end of World War One.
Mm-hmm.
But what I think is really interesting about that entire story is, I mean, the death rate in World War One was just catastrophic, and the only thing worse was the death rate from the Spanish flu. And Walt miraculously managed to miss both. He
Mm-hmm.
didn't die in World War One because he never really was a combatant, and
Mm-hmm.
he didn't die from the Spanish flu either, despite having contracted it. And stop for a moment and just ask yourself, oh my gosh, what if Walt had died from either?
It'd be a
Right?
very different world.
Exactly.
Yeah, and people
Exactly.
haven't read your books. There are some surprising things that you
Yeah.
might take for granted in your life that came out of Disney. I won't give them
Yeah.
away. They're really good books that you should read, and at least the first one is available on audio book. Is the second one?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
Okay.
they're all available, hardback, softcover, Kindle, and audio.
Yeah. Okay, awesome. Okay, so he survives these two major events, and then the Great Depression happens.
Well, he comes home, starts his first studio, and it lasts all of 18 months, goes bankrupt.
Ah,
And following the bankruptcy, he then boards a train for California with all of $40 a single suitcase and a one-way ticket, Megan. He's not coming back.
did
He's all
Mama
in
know
on his
that?
dream of coming to California and making this thing happen.
Mm-hmm.
And once he comes to California, he then founds not Laugh-O-Gram Studio, which is the failed studio in Kansas City, but the Disney Brothers Studio that, oh, by the way, today is the largest entertainment company anywhere in the world. But that's only following the failure and the bankruptcy in Kansas City.
Mm-hmm.
And it's there that he creates Oswald. And of course, he loses Oswald.
Yeah.
And it's only after losing Oswald that he comes up with Mickey Mouse. And, he creates Mickey Mouse again on the eve of the Great Depression. And the Great Depression, everyone else in Hollywood is struggling, not Walt. Walt actually thrived during the Great Depression. And then, the studio gets taken over for Army training during World War II. And it's the Disney studio that really struggles as a result of the war effort. And so it really is sort of a back and forth, process. And I think, all of our listeners can certainly identify, with that. You're going to have your ups, you're going to have your downs. Success and failure is never a linear, straight line, process.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
There probably isn't a person amongst us right now who isn't in a downward spiral, who isn't in some sort of valley.
Mm-hmm. Or
And
isn't
I'll
hurting
speak
for someone they know.
yeah, and I'll speak directly to the travel planners right now. Today, May 9th, Nikki and I, we were supposed to be on a direct flight to take our dream trip to Tokyo Disneyland.
Yeah.
My number one bucket list trip.
Yeah.
And it's canceled. Not happening. Because nobody these days is going anywhere. Um, but it'll happen.
Yeah.
This isn't going to last forever. And think about World War One. Think about the Spanish flu. But it didn't take long to recover, because when you get to the 1920s, I mean, when you think about the 1920s historically, we immediately associate them with what? The Roaring 20s.
Yeah.
So we got back on our feet pretty quickly. So it's going to be okay.
It's gonna be
And
okay.
when Walt was coming back from New York City after losing Oswald the not so lucky rabbit,
And we should say
after
he was
facing
stolen, correct?
well, when he had signed the distribution deal for Oswald,
Okay.
he had signed away the rights to the character as well.
Oh, he got
And so he
Tony
goes to
Braxton.
New York looking for a bigger and better contract.
Yeah.
And when he asked for that bigger and better contract, he basically had the character taken away from him.
Yeah.
And he's staring bankruptcy in the face all over again. And rather than giving up, he becomes resourceful. and he remembers a little character, i.e., a mouse, who had kept him company during those dark days as he was facing bankruptcy in the studio in Kansas City. And that's when he sketched out the first story that would become, Plane Crazy or Steamboat Willie, i.e., Mickey Mouse. And
So,
I think the key point there is, right now we can panic or we can pivot. And
yep.
I don't know about you, but I'm kind of sick of the word pivot these days. But that's our choice.
Yeah.
We can implode or we can innovate.
Hmm.
We can retreat or we can be resourceful.
Yeah.
And Walt made the decision to pivot. He made the choice to innovate. He made the choice to be resourceful. And those are the exact same choices that all of us are facing right now. He
Yeah.
chose a different and better story.
It's
And
awesome.
the world is better as a result.
Was he a married person at this time?
By the time he went to New York to negotiate what he thought would be a bigger and better contract, yes, he and Lily were married in 1925.
Hmm.
So in 1928, Lily went with him to New York City. And in fact, when he was coming up with Mickey Mouse on the train ride home, he showed the first sketch to Lily, and Lily thought the character was adorable and asked Walt, "What are you going to name him?" And Walt said, "Well, I'm thinking of naming him Mortimer." And Lily said, "Oh
Nah.
no, Walt, that that name is much too heavy. Why don't you name him Mickey instead?" And it was Roy who later said, "Thank God we didn't name him Mortimer."
Yeah.
Yeah,
That
yeah.
doesn't fall off the tongue the same way.
No, not at all. And it's great because if you come to the Disneyland Resort and you go to the second gate or second part, Disney California Adventure, when you walk down Buena Vista Street tells the story of Walt coming to California in 1923 following the bankruptcy of Laugh-O-Gram Studio. And you walk down that street and you end at Carthay Circle Theater, which is where Snow White premiered in 1937.
Cool.
But at the start of the street, on the left is the Oswald the Lucky Rabbit gas station.
Hmm.
Across from Oswald is the Mortimer Mouse fruit stand, which is honoring the original name of
Oh,
what was
yes.
going to be Mickey. So
Well,
it's kind of cool. If you know those backstories, you get it. And I don't know that every guest really does.
no, they don't, but they also haven't toured with you, which is something your students get to do, which is exciting. So,
Right. So, and then there's one more thing.
okay.
Before Walt ever got on the train leaving New York City to come back to California, he sent Roy a telegram and said, "Leaving New York, stopping in Kansas City, we'll be home Sunday morning. Everything is going to be okay."
All right. I'll take
Think
it.
about that.
Yeah.
And I think that's the last word, not just to the travel agents, but to everyone. Do the next right thing. Stay positive. Everything is going to be okay.
Hmm. Okay, so we're ebbing and flowing in success. We're having setbacks, and then when was it that things like how long was it? What else did he have to do before things just took off? Because he had setbacks in opening the park, right, and even getting the land, and even the infrastructure. It just kept happening, right?
Well, I mean, I mean, with Mickey, Mickey was almost an instant and overnight success,
Okay.
and then his next big deal was wanting to do Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, and that comes out in the late 30s, and people were like, "Why, Walt? You're like the only person in the country, certainly Hollywood, who's making any money. Why in the world do you want to make this investment? You're out of your mind."
Mm-hmm.
And he was like, "Well, because I think this is going to work, and we could do even better." And so he shows the premiere, but he still is going to have to invest, millions of dollars to finish the darn thing. And after he showed a rough cut with, again, millions more to go, and somebody sent him a note, and the note simply said, Walt, stick to shorts. And he was just devastated.
Yeah.
And for years, like, he never knew who sent him the note that said, stick to shorts. And the person who sent him that note was his brother Roy. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Um, and again, the whole point was, we're making money, we're making more money, we're making money. Why do you need to take this risk? And again, Walt reinvented himself later with Disneyland. And when he opened Disneyland, why are you taking this risk? We've got Mickey. We're doing fine with the animated features. Why do we need to get into the amusement park business? What in the world is this all about? And he tried to do it with Mickey Mouse Park, 8 acres next to the studio. Burbank wanted nothing to do with it. The city council shut him down. And so then he dreamed bigger, 160 acres, Orange Grove in Anaheim. And, he throws everything at that project. And, they get it open, and opening day is a disaster. I mean, just an unmitigated disaster. And the press just, skewered him the next day. Walt's dream is a nightmare. Disneyland is Walt's folly. And, his brother didn't think it would work. Lily wanted nothing to do with it.
Oh.
But by Labor Day, they had welcomed their 1 millionth guest. And it's interesting because, Walt, again, more failures than successes, and he kept reinventing himself and reinvesting over and over again. It was not until he built Disneyland that he ever had any true financial success and financial security.
Yeah.
And the only time he did anything where people were like, Walt, this is good, and we're all behind you, and they didn't question the investment, they didn't question the spending. The only thing Walt ever did that he didn't have any doubters or any questions was Mary Poppins.
Okay.
And Walt was like, oh my gosh, this might fail. Because like he was so used to all of the doubters that he started doubting himself. And it's sort of sad because Mary Poppins, is in development like 63. I think it was released in 64.
Mm-hmm.
And then Walt dies, 2 years later. And so you think about this guy who, is this creative genius and all of these successes and changes our world. What does he get? Like 2 years of resting on his laurels, and then he's gone. So yeah,
which makes this current time frame not that long, and hopefully not that long. And everyone, I mean, this is not just the travel industry, but everyone's reinventing themselves. Everybody's finding a different angle and being resourceful. So this is a good lesson to learn.
Yeah.
And that it could take...
And I think the other important thing, I was teaching history of California in this most recent semester. And, literally like midway through, we had spring break, and then I never saw my students again. We went to remote instruction.
Yeah.
And I told my students, we're no longer learning history, we are living history.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And I think all of our listeners need to realize that's what we're experiencing right now. But there's going to come a point where this is over and the world's going to pick back up again. It might not look like what we remembered it. It'll be different. Mm-hmm. But we are going to look back on this, and it will be history.
Yeah.
And we're going to say, we did things this way, but now we do them that way.
Yeah.
And, the folks who are innovating, the folks who are pivoting, the folks who are resourceful today are going to be way more ready for what the new world looks like when we move forward and when we open up than, the folks who are just like, and, wishing it wasn't happening, because it is happening.
Yeah. Okay. So because it is VE I mean, we've got a pretty good overview, and we did a great coverage of it, which I appreciate, but because it's VE Day, I would like to talk about the role of Mickey in World War II. because I love
Yeah.
it.
Yeah. So again, the studio was taken over December 7th, 1941. Walt made an immediate commitment. Whatever you need from the studio in terms of cartoons for troop training, animation films to help secure war bond
Hmm.
funding. Uh, they're yours, and we'll produce them at cost. And it's kind of fun to go back into the archives and see what the Disney studio did.
Hmm.
A lot of them are just fun cartoons to watch. A lot of them you sort of see them as almost political propaganda,
Hmm.
and you have to view them sort of through that historical lens.
Hmm.
I think what is maybe most interesting is the fact that Hitler himself went after Mickey Mouse as this sort of vile, anti-Semitic vermin, if you will.
Hmm.
And I write about that in, I think it's chapter 3, listening to your quote unquote Walter ego, because Mickey Mouse was Walt's alter ego, and I like to play on words there.
Yeah, it's cute.
But then, secondly, and this has kind of been lost in history, when the Allied troops landed on the beaches of Normandy on D-Day, which is what ultimately led to VE Day,
Yeah.
um, the password, because you had troops who were going to end up meeting up with each other because it was a massive, massive operation.
Hmm.
And initially, maybe you're meeting up with a friendly troop, or maybe you're meeting up with a foe. You don't necessarily know in the fog of war. They had to have a password to know, are you friend or are you foe?
Hmm.
The password on D-Day was Mickey Mouse.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yep. So
uh,
again, that indomitable spirit not only got us through the Great Depression, but it was Mickey Mouse who got us through D-Day.
awesome. Thanks for sharing that story. I love it. Ah, well, Jeff, before we close out, is there anything else that we might be missing or just, want to leave the listeners or, in this case, video viewers with?
Well, I think we're all missing travel, and
Mm-hmm.
I think we're all missing. At least I am, because we're used to going at least to Disneyland on a very, very, very regular basis.
Yes, you.
And so again, everybody hang in there. It's a tough time, but we're going to get through it. This will pass. It will become a part of history at some point.
Mm-hmm.
And so pause for a moment and at least appreciate the fact that you're living through history. And, people are going to learn it at some point, something that you're actually living through. And, we have the opportunity to be resilient and be stronger as a result. And, if there's anything I can do to help, whether it's through the books, whether it's through the blog, whether it's connecting with you,
Mm-hmm.
through an email or through some sort of remote session, do not hesitate to reach out. I want to be a resource. I want to be, as helpful as in any way possible. Like a lot of folks, I do have a little bit of extra time
Mm-hmm.
right now, and so don't hesitate to do that, because again, we're not all in the exact same boat, but I do think we have all been affected by this,
Mm-hmm.
and anything we can do to help each other, um, let's get through this together.
Yeah, and I should mention Jeff is a professional speaker, and so normally at this time he's just on the road speaking at like large pharmaceutical conferences and all those. I mean, like, would you do actuaries one year? Is that what you did?
It's funny. People
Accountants.
ask me like, well, what kind of groups do you speak to? And the answer is yes. And every, I know, I mean, travel planners, what, 90, 95% of whatever got wiped out.
Yeah.
Every single speaking event for me in spring of 2020 wiped out.
Yeah.
I mean, I feel it. Now,
Yeah.
fortunately, my university job is still there and still stable. So, we're very grateful for that. And, I also am very fortunate because what was scheduled for spring of 2020 is also being rescheduled for spring of 2021.
Okay.
So, it's going to be okay.
Yeah.
It might look different by the time we get to spring of 2021. Who knows at this point? But again, we've got a little extra time, right now. And, that's why we're doing more of the blog. That's why we're doing more of this. It's part of our pivot. It's part of our resourcefulness. It's part of our innovating. And so, again, I want to make myself more available, to whoever, needs it, because, Disney is that lift, that spark, that inspiration, that motivation.
Yeah.
And I know that we need that.
Yeah, and I know that people are struggling with money these days, but if you can get really good ice cream delivery to Jeff's house, take payment in kind.
Absolutely. Yeah. I still very much have my my ice cream habit these days.
Hey, good. Don't give it up. All right,
That's right.
Jeff. Well, I'm going to put your logo back on the screen. I took it down for 1 second because it was on your face, but now it's back on the screen before, and everyone can see your website. And wherever you see this video posted, you will see the link below where you can enter the giveaway for Jeff's books and his guest lecture for your military group, your civic group, your Red Hat Society, Girl Scouts, I don't know, Boy Scouts. It would be a good time. All right. Well, thank you, Jeff, for being on the program. I appreciate your time.
All right. Thank you, Megan.
All right. Yep.